Agárrate aquí, corre.
En inglés, en inglés.
Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the second episode of The Real Life of a Language Teacher. And question, has it ever happened to you guys that you are always thinking of how to be a very creative teacher? Or you're always looking for different dynamic activities so you can do them with your students in your classroom or outside the classroom, but as usually we never have the enough time to plan them or the enough material. Well, today is your lucky day. Yeah, because I'm going to show you some very, let's say, uncommon activities. Probably they are very common, but you might not know at all. But all of them are very dynamic activities. And an interesting fact about these dynamic activities is that all and each of the activities helps you, right, to take the anxiety and stress levels very low. You will never struggle anymore with the stress, with the anxiety, with your students getting bored and all that thing, because these activities will help you in all of your classes, and you will be like the most dynamic teacher ever. Something really interesting as well is that you can adapt all of these activities to any level, right? You can use them for children, with teenagers, with adults, with whoever you want, right? So let me show you some of these dynamic activities and how you can plan them with little time and with materials that we all have around us in our houses, so that we can just get them probably in Walmart if you have the opportunity to go to Walmart, or even in the market. For instance, I will show you how you can have a very speaking and dynamic speaking activity with only a deck of cards. This will help you to have a very dynamic speaking activity. Also, I will show you how you can work with the workbook in a very different way. You know, that colorless book that your students usually hate, that they don't really like. Try to start thinking of how you can create a very dynamic activity with workbook, your students, and a coin. Yeah, all those elements together will give you a very nice and dynamic activity. And these are some examples, and I will show you even more activities. So let's begin, and welcome to the second episode of The Real Life of a Language Teacher. Dynamic activity is the ABC race. I promise you guys that you will have lots of fun here. Your students will love it. You will enjoy this activity. This activity will mainly help you to reinforce and practice vocabulary. Okay, also you can practice some general structures like the simple present, simple past, probably future, but the activity is mainly to reinforce the vocabulary that you are working, like verbs in present, in past, past participle, or even adjectives, jobs. This activity is very easy. Actually, everything you have to plan is just the words and the sentences you want your students to practice during the activity. Take just a small paper or your notebook and then write down all the words that you want your students to write or to get with this activity. The material that you will need, it's only little white cards, right? And you will ask your students to do it. I mean, your students will create the material. What's the process then? Well, you will ask your students to get in teams of 4, probably 5, 6. That will be based on the number of students that you have in your group, and each student will bring the complete ABC all the letters of the ABC in small white cards. In the next lesson, you take your students, the whole group, to the school's yard there in a green area. You ask your students to put all the cards on the floor and make a circle and choose one person to run, okay? You will take that person, the person who will be running, and you will give the instructions. The instructions are very easy. You will say a word. You can handle this, just you say the word in English and they bring it in English, or you say the word in Spanish and they bring the word in English. I mean, that is up to you. And you say, alright, you are going to run, because you have like 4 or 5 different teams, so you must have 4 or 5 different students who will be running. And you will tell them that you will be saying a word. For instance, you say, okay, I need a word correct in English. So they run very, very fast back to their teams, and together with their mates, they will check the spelling of the word, they will be interacting, they will be checking the list, they will be practicing, and they will have to form the word, of course in English, with the little white cards, right? And run back to you, where you are waiting for them, and they will put the correct answer, or the answer that they got, on the floor, and then you will decide, or you will check if they wrote it correctly or if they didn't. So we'll say, alright, this team wins because their word is correctly. This team, well, sorry, but you are wrong. This is not the correct spelling check, or this is not the word that I asked for, and so on. And then you give a very quick and small feedback. Remember, guys, pretty is with double T and it finishes with Y. That is the general feedback. It's just a small feedback because you have 4 or 5 different students in each group or in each team, so they will be helping each other and they will be checking the spelling and everything about this, right? Don't be afraid of asking for complete sentences. Why? Because you will have like 4 or 5 different students. That means 4 or 5 different complete ABCs, okay? And of course, if you ask a sentence in affirmative or in negative or interrogative form, your students will be able to get it because they will have enough cards to get the whole sentence. So don't be afraid of that. Just make sure previously to ask all of the students to bring all the ABCs, okay, all the letters of the ABCs, and make sure to have more than 3 or more than 4 students in each team. You will not have that problem on forming the complete sentences, alright? So that is called the ABC race. You will have lots of fun, your students will run a lot, anxiety and stress levels will be very low. At the end, well, you can just end this activity with a worksheet, with working on the workbook, or an activity, a small activity on their notebooks, something really nice, something really more relaxing. And then, well, you already practice the vocabulary of the structure, and your students will not have a lot of difficulties as they would at the beginning, or if they wouldn't do this activity, right? So try it. This is the ABC race. You can check here in the video how students are having lots of fun, how they are running, how they are yelling, how they are laughing, how they are doing lots of different things. And believe me, you and your students especially will love this activity. Workbook. Oh yes, that boring book that your students usually hate, your students never want to work with, your students are not really kind on working on this material, okay? But you know, we must work with the workbook. The school asks students to buy both books, student and workbooks. It is a must that we must complete the whole book, right? But how can you have your students working with the workbook in a very dynamic way? I asked you at the very beginning of this video to think of a very dynamic activity related to the workbook, your students, and a coin. It is called a toss to answer. Imagine that your students have to, or you have your students answer exercise 2 from page 44, and then the exercise says complete the sentences with the correct form of the verb in brackets, right? And you have like 8, 7, 10, 9 different sentences. You ask your students to get in pairs or in small teams of 3, probably 4, that is up to you. I recommend you to have your students work in pairs. That is much better, right? Each couple or each team must have a coin, right? And each student must have, of course, his book. Then students will take turns before they start answering. In order to know who starts answering the exercise, students will take turns to make the toss, right? You know, the usual question, heads or tails. One student with the coin just throw the coin and they say heads or tail, and then you say, I don't know, heads. All right, and then it's tail, so you lose answer number one, right? And then okay, the student answer number one, and all right, the next heads or tail, tail. All right, it's tail, and now I lose, so I have to answer number two, and then the students keep doing this until they finish the 9 or the 7 or the 10 sentences in the exercise of the workbook. All right, so this is really completely different. Activity itself encourages with some speaking, right? Because they have to ask, okay, heads or tails, I win, or you lose, okay, answer the next, okay, let me throw the coin. I mean, the activity itself motivates students to use a little bit of the language while they are answering. Your students will be working differently, they will feel completely differently, they won't be that bored, right? That is important, that your students never feel bored. At the end, you will have happy students, okay? All of them worked, because you know, we usually have 1 or 2 students who never want to work in the class, but with this activity you will have them work the whole time with the whole activity, during the whole activity, all right? And all of them will be participating, okay? And something really important, they will be giving and receiving feedback from each other, okay? And you can only monitor the activity and help them with possible questions or problems that they might be facing at that moment, okay? And just to give just general and quick feedback so they can keep going on the activity, all right? So this is called a toss to answer. Try it. I mean, you can do this with a worksheet, with your workbook, even with the student book, and also if you have an activity on the notebook, well, if it is adaptable, you can use it also with that activity, okay? And just try it. Your students will really like it, and they will have lots of fun, believe me. And something most important is that they will learn from you, from the activity itself, and from each other. So here is another dynamic activity. But what about when your students finish the activity in the workbook or the worksheet or any other activity? Has it ever happened the next situation? You ask a question to all the class, like, all right, who gives me question or answer number 1? And everything you listen is this. Nothing. Everybody is in silence. It is very common in during the lessons, isn't it? Yeah, it is. How can you handle that situation? Well, I have a very dynamic activity as well for that, right? For the participation. Lolly stick, right? You can buy different lolly sticks, okay? Just buy the number of students that you have in your group, and then in small papers, okay, just write all the names of your students, like Lili, Ale, Carlos, Luis, with a little bit of scotch tape. Paste the names on the lolly sticks. For example, I have here Lili, and then I've got Luis, and then I have here, for example, Kitty, and I have Carlos. For instance, I have a group of 5 different students. You will have this every time you have class with that group. Whenever you want your students to participate, take out your lolly sticks, try to mix them, okay? Try to mix them very well. And then you say, all right, for question or answer number 1, I will pick a lolly stick, and whose name is on the lolly stick is the student who will answer that question. Okay, let's see. Number 1, please. I can see. I don't see. Like this, for example. And you say, okay, all right, Luis. Okay, tell me number 1. And then Luis answers. Okay, hey, that is fantastic. Okay, one more. I can see. What about this one? Kitty number 2. And then you keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going. Probably, you may want to ask one of your front students to pick the lolly stick for you. Luisa, can you please pick the next victim? no, and then of course Lisa will pick the logistic, and then it's Ale, so Ale number next, and so on and so on, right? If you don't want to do this logistic stuff, well, probably when you get to the classroom, before you begin your lesson, you ask one of your students to give you a sheet of paper from their notebook, okay, and you handle that student your list, okay, your attendance list. You ask him or ask her to write all the names of his classmates, okay, and cut them out, and just blend the little papers and put it into a plastic bag. And that is a very similar situation where you have the small papers, and then you just mix them with the plastic bag like this, and then you pick one paper, or you have other student pick the paper for you, and it's similar situation. And then you can keep those little papers, and every time you want your students to participate, they must participate if you pick their names, right? So this will help you to first to catch your students' attention, because all the students will be like, oh my goodness, is that my name? What if it is my name? They will be really paying attention to you and to everything that you're saying at that moment, because they don't want to be picked. That's for real though, no? So try it. You will have a better participation from your students, and your students will feel a little bit different, the usual stuff, okay? So try it. This is really nice. And if you know a different activity that elicits participation, put it in the comments and share it with us, okay? Many of the readings from the student book are really boring for your students. They are not really interested in reading this. Signs of Olympia. What is that? Oh my. Well, it talks about Moscow 1980, Barcelona 1992, Athens 2004, Beijing 2008. Well, it is obviously that this reading is about the Olympic Games. What if your students are not interested in learning about the Olympic Games? How can you change this? How can you have a different atmosphere? How can you elicit the students to read? How can you elicit a dynamic atmosphere while your students are reading? Forget about the student book just for readings, let's say, okay? Probably not every class, but probably twice or once a week. I don't know, it's up to you. What I usually do is to forget about the readings almost in every class. This is because I know my students are always looking forward to reading something more interesting, something more, catchy, something that it really draws their attention to the story, to the information, I mean, to everything, okay? Why not trying unusual readings? It is not the same reading about the Olympic Games than reading about a man who puts his daughter into the fridge to try to revive her because he forgot his daughter in the car in a very hot day, and the little baby died. So he asked him to put it in the fridge, so just to try to to revive her. Is that really true? It is true! Yes, it really is true. You can find these sort of readings on the Yahoo UK website. There you will find lots of different unusual readings, weird readings that your students will like a lot, okay? Probably if you find a reading about Trump, probably in the New York Times, you will find a similar reading about the same person here in the Yahoo UK website, but talking about the weirdest thing that happened to that guy. You can go also to the site News in Levels, and there you will find lots of different readings about everything: music, theater, real life, global warming, whatever. The good thing of this website is that, for instance, if you find a reading about animals, the website will give you 3 different levels. Level 1, which is the very basic level. Level 2, which is like an intermediate level, and level 3, which is the real reading with the real vocabulary, the real words, the real context and everything. Alright, you can go to those websites, look for the reading, for a reading, choose the one that you think your students will like the most, print it out and handle a copy of that reading, and then you can have a very nice speaking activity, a small time for reading, just like the last 5 or 10 minutes of the class, so just to make your students feel very relaxing, and they will just finish the class with something completely different. All right, or probably you can have this reading just to have your students learn any structure, any grammatical structure in a very inductive way, where students have to find the structure. But it is completely different. Your students will like reading about unconventional situations or stories than the ones that we have usually on the books, right? So try having these unusual activities, unusual readings, and try to adapt them according to your students' interests, needs, tastes, and of course level. That's also important, right? And well, you will receive lots of comments. Actually, the readings themselves will elicit your students to give different opinions, comments about the reading or about the story by using the language. Yes, they will try to use the language because they want to communicate something that really caught their attention from the information that they just read, and they would like to say something funny, something that just popped on their minds, and they want to participate, so they have to do that in English, and they will use the language. And then you will be learning a lot for their ideas, and the students will be learning a lot from real language. Okay, that is trying to give them comprehensible input. Okay, so try these unusual activities, unusual readings. You will find a huge variety of contexts and situations and stories that your students might really like. Okay, so that is a very dynamic activity called unusual readings. Try it and let's see what happens.